have unstable housing, and in general, just have a lot of barriers to reaching life goals. So that's the group of guys that we work with, and we run a program that provides all services in one location. And so a big part of what we do is we provide transitional work to those men. We run a custom screen printing business, and all of the men that work with us are on payroll. So they're here on hourly payroll between $12 and $14 an hour. And in that time, they get case management support through a social worker. They get the work experience, and they participate in our cognitive behavioral therapy classes every day as well. And at the end of their time with us, some are usually between 4 and 6 months, we do job placement, and we place in different companies around town. The city is one of those, but we also do place in a lot of private companies. The city was our first job placement partner, and we're very, very appreciative of that. And so, like I said, last year was a big year because we opened our second location, and we are planning on opening a third location in the upstate in 2023, which isn't that far away now. So this is our year of rest and refinement. I'm telling my staff, and next year we'll be growing again. So we went from a staff of 6 last year to 12 this year, and we'll probably be up to between 18 and 20 next year. And we have 6 out of 12 of our staff are formerly incarcerated program graduates. So we've been able to hire the guys that we've worked with back on staff, and they're delivering our frontline services. And just in terms of some numbers for you, we hired 53 men out of prison last year in the Charleston area. And we hired all of them to work here in our print shop. And we have some really awesome job placement retention rates. And so we track that pretty closely. We have 98% of our guys stay on their jobs for 30 days or more. And it's 94% of our guys stay on their jobs for 90 days or more. And we're at 89% of our guys stay on their jobs for 180 days or more. So
Amy, I'm going to slow you down just a tad bit.
Sure. Yeah.
We're trying to absorb all these numbers. And
yeah.
So you have 98% stay on the job
stay on the job for 30 days. So that's just like, hey, can we get somebody work ready? Most of our guys have never worked. So to try to get them to a place where they can show up on time and they show up consistently, that ends up being, some of the biggest challenges for them.
So you said 98% stay on the job for 30 days or more, and then 89%
for 90 days or more.
Okay.
Yeah. So we track our job placement rates pretty closely, and then we also track recidivism pretty closely. And we look at recidivism at different points. We look at rearrest rates. So that's a rearrest for any reason. And then we also look at reincarceration. So for our 2021 numbers, we didn't have any of the guys that completed the program last year. None of them were rearrested for any reason. And then, so that's 0 for our numbers for last year. But then sort of more importantly, cumulatively over the last 7 years that we've been working with men coming out of prison and partnering with the city, we're at a 22% rearrest rate, which is what we compared to a national rearrest rate of 62%. So 22% of our grads have ever been rearrested for any reason over the last 7 years. So
let me back up on that. So the past 7 years, out of the folks who have completed the program, only 22% were rearrested.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And for us, it's really important to track rearrest and not just reincarceration, because people can get rearrested over and over again, but never go back to prison. And we're really in the business of helping people change their criminal lifestyles. And so for us, we like to track all the small touches that people have with the criminal justice system. And it's easier for us to get real-time information about that. So we like to track rearrest rates, and it gives us some good feedback loop on how we're doing. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm happy to take any questions about Turn 90. What I say every time I come on here is the door's open. We love to give tours. We love to show people what we're doing. So please come by.
Councilwoman Mitchell, I thought I saw your hand up.
I just want to ask Amy a quick question.
Sure.
Is the Austin Will Society still in existence?
They run the Federal Halfway House here. That's their primary presence in here, and as I know it in Columbia as well. And so we partner with them to the extent that we enroll and hire men that are currently living in the Alston Wilkes houses.
Okay, because one time they used to assist ex-offenders to find jobs and things like that. When I was working, I used to work along with them at the time. And they had two halfway houses. They had one here in Charleston, but they closed that one. That's the one I was working to, because they didn't have enough people coming from the Charleston area going to the halfway house here, because it was getting too much time. And they only was taking clients who had 6 months left on their sentence. And we have to find them jobs and give them placement on jobs and things like that for 6 months. Then with the money that they received, they was only receiving a certain amount of money out of their paycheck every week, and the rest of the money going to the bank. And then once they complete the 6 months, they would give them all this money that's helped them to secure not going back to the same crime position that they were doing before. So I don't know if they were still in existence, because I don't hear too much about them anymore. So I just wanted to ask.
No, you're exactly right. And you described it exactly how I know it, that they take a percentage, that it's a 6-month window, but the halfway house here is still operating, and maybe it's a different one than the one that you were working with before, but there is one that still operates here in Charleston, and the one in Columbia does as well. Yeah. And so that's actually one of our bigger referring partners.
Okay, so the one that they had in Greenville, they probably closed it. They had 3, one in Charleston, Greenville, one in Columbia at the time. And then the one was on Sproul Avenue, English and Sproul. That's the one they closed, and I didn't know they had opened another one here, at the time after I left anyway.
Yeah, they have one in both places. They used to do more in reentry years ago. They used to do more around the job placement, and they actually used to meet people out and do resume writing and job prep services and help with utilities, but I don't think they do that anymore here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mitchell. Mayor or Councilmember Seekings, any questions for Amy?
Amy, thank you for all your, hey, how are you?
Hi, good to see you.
We love your program and all the work you're doing to help former offenders. And Sandy and I, as you remember, have visited you up there before. It's great you've transitioned to your own in-house work program. We're looking for employees, by the way. I know some of your graduates come to work for the city, but keep them coming. And we're looking for workers right now, as a matter of fact. So do keep that in mind. But congratulations and thanks for your terrific efforts.
Thanks, Mayor. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Seekings, I see the chief has a hand up as well. Amy, to follow up on the mayor's comment, how many city employees do we have within your program?
I asked that question today in preparation for this, and what I got back was, I think 8 is the number that we have at the city. One of our challenges is that sending people to the city is that the for-profit market has blown up and are also looking for employees, and our guys are really sensitive to pay. And so we'll typically just go any place that pays the most. And so, sometimes we can convince people, benefits and stability, and they're interested in that, and they are, but it's been a bigger argument, lately. And so most of our guys do now go to private companies, and we've experienced the same kind of challenge with the county. So we've only sent y'all a handful last year. We sent a handful to the county and a handful to you, but we do still send some your way, and really appreciate the opportunity for the men.
Thank you. Chief Reynolds, did you have a question or comment for Amy?
I just wanted an opportunity to compliment publicly Amy and her leadership and her accomplishments, and not just her, but her team that she's developed. The fact that she's expanded this, that it's getting national recognition. She truly is a pioneer, and disrupting the pipeline. The prison is a passion of hers, developing these men. I've met many of them, and they're very impressive. The leaders that are being developed out of this program. I believe in trusting but verifying, and i.e. the mayor just said it, actually getting out and visiting with the men, being in the classroom. I missed that, Amy. I haven't been there for a little while, so it's time to get back with you. But
I'd love to have you back.
There's so many men that are reaching back And part of Amy's special sauce and part of her many approaches is to actually have others mentor people that have been successful in the program, reaching back and helping others, giving them a reason for hope and success and showing them the examples. And just the mentoring, the true outcomes is really what matters. And she's really kind of defying a lot of the odds and defying a lot of the, I think, past failures and creating a pathway for these men to succeed. And it's truly impressive, Amy, what you're doing, and to be able to replicate yourself and to be able to grow that is amazing. So I'm so grateful for you, for your leadership, for your team, for the people that are working with you, and the success that you're achieving is absolutely helping our community. It's saving a lot of dollars. But more than anything, I think we're all about saving lives. And if we save one life, it's worth it. And you absolutely are doing that. So good job.
Thank you, Chief. I really appreciate it. And I know you're here in Charleston, but if you're ever in Columbia, you should drop by and see the Columbia Center, because it's so inspiring to see what we did here and to see it happening in another city.
I will. And I've talked to Skip Holbrook, the chief up there, and Leon Lott and others who are working with you. You've got a lot of partners, a lot of good collaborators that you've developed.
Yeah. And it really came from the city. You know, the mayor's office and the police department in the city were my first partners. So to see how that's blossomed and taken on across the state is just so great. And that's really a testament to all of us and y'all willing to step up for me many years ago. So it's very fun to see it flourish, and I appreciate you all.
Well, Amy, I think I've been with you for most of the 7 years, either on city council or the Charleston County Bar Association. And I know you went through sort of a reorganization phase early on. And
yeah,
the city has been with you from the very beginning with this. And it's very important, as the chief said, that we're saving money, but we're saving lives as well. And I know from Kay Cross, our Human Resources Director, she loves the folks that you send our way because they are hardworking and they stay with us. So I will echo that. Keep on sending us more men like the ones that you are graduating from your program. They are good city employees. Without any further questions, Amy, we'll thank you for jumping on, and thank you for staying in touch with me. And,
of course.
Okay, and I'm going to take you up on a tour, I promise.
Please, anybody drop by, give me a shout, and we'll open our doors up, and I'll show you behind the scenes.
Right. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Bye. All right, Chief Reynolds. I know that you've been bouncing around. So good to have you back on screen, and I know you've been traveling. So we're going to come to you next for a police department update.
Fantastic. I think with me, I have Deputy Chief Walker is on, Lieutenant Heath King, and I think in the conference room at headquarters, we have Lieutenant Shyla Murray, Captain Jason Bruder, and Heather Malloy. And I think Shyla is going to do my slides, and we'll start from the beginning here. Go to the next slide. This is an overview of some areas that we chose. There's a whole lot that kind of came my way when I said we're going to do an overview of the department. We got a lot of information and we kind of shaved it down to what you see here. We're going to cover some of the things that are going on in the city with crime and some of our collision data, community outreach, and a variety of different updates. What you see in front of you is a graph of the last 10 years of our data, specifically field contacts, which is what you'll see, the contact cards that we track all of our traffic stops, all of our contacts that we have with our citizens. And you'll see that number goes up significantly. And that was part of the audit. That's part of something that we've been working on. And we're actually, those numbers should be going up, and we're, our officers are doing a really good job of tracking their contacts with the community so that we can continue to kind of analyze what we're doing and how we're doing it, why we're doing it, where we're doing it. And then the other notable thing, and you'll see some numbers in a minute on the next slide, is just crime statistics. If you look at the red line, which is really the most important, of these, this highlights violent crime, and then the blue line is property crime. And you see that it goes up over the last couple of years, and then this year you see it kind of level off last year, and now you see it going down. And just as an example, and you'll see in a minute, we have had year to date, and I know unfortunately that'll change, but year to date we've had 0 homicides, and we've really seen a lot of our numbers come down, including property crimes, violent crimes, and the officer productivity, which is kind of the drugs and weapons, the green line there, has increased. Our officers are really out there focusing on some of those areas where we have our biggest challenges, and they're really doing a lot of good work, and you can see the results. So next slide. Again, I'm not going to go over all the numbers, but you can see that there's a downward trend when you look at, this doesn't show you all the year-to-date comparisons, but when you look at homicides, I think year-to-date we had 2 last year. We don't usually get as many early in the year. It's usually about this time of year that we start experiencing more of some of those shootings. And I will tell you, and it'll come out later, and some of our partnerships, our collaborative efforts on working on violent crime is absolutely making a difference. But you see that our numbers, just in general, in almost all the categories, are going down. And some of the areas where you see it going up is where our officers are really productive. And some of our motor vehicle theft and theft from vehicles, those are areas where we still continue to see some increases. Go ahead. This is a notable slide just in that it shows the continued growth of our population, the continued strain on our roads, our infrastructure, and we continue to focus on what I call the 3 E's: education, enforcement, engineering, working with our partners. And as we do enforcement, working on those areas where we know that the data shows we're having the highest number of collisions, where we're getting complaints from our constituents, where there are problem areas that we've identified. And so we really have become more efficient, more effective, and actually addressing some of these collision areas that we have in the city. It's a big area of concern, obviously, traffic. Go ahead. These are our fatalities, and a fatality takes a lot of effort to investigate. Some of our hit and runs. When you look at some of the causations for some of these areas, pedestrians versus auto, as an example, oftentimes the pedestrian is at fault. And so we look at that closely. There's certain areas where we need to look at crosswalks and engineering and lighting and signage, and where the complaints are coming in, and just continue to do everything we can to try to reduce these numbers, which you can see. We had a very large number last year, 24 in 2021, and we've had 2 year to date. Next slide. I'm not going to go over all of these, but under the tutelage of Deputy Chief Walker and our community-oriented policing division, there has been a significant focus on working with our communities, on building trust, on building collaboration, on building initiatives that are not necessarily police-centric, and being in places like the Gathering Center and other areas of the city, and working with our partners, and not just being a police presence, but being a collaborative presence to do what we can to help our youth in particular, and help the communities that really need the most help. And so there's a lot of different things that have been done. Next slide. And just continuation of some of the outreach efforts with our Citizens Advisory Council, and continue to build participation, working with Greg's Groceries. You can see there's just been a lot of things that have been accomplished through a lot of these initiatives, and a lot of emphasis on the overdose. And I think tomorrow, Judge Brucey Hendricks, who's going to get recognized appropriately so by the mayor, and I think through a proclamation. But the efforts from Judge Hendricks, from Gil Kurlikowski, from our hospitals, our schools, all the federal, state, and local partners, the mental health community. So many people have been working on our overdose efforts together. Next slide. Staffing continues to be a challenge. I'll say on the positive side of the ledger, we're doing a fantastic job with our hiring. I couldn't be more proud of our recruiting, our training. We're doing more training. You'll see that, and I think in one of the slides, the amount of training that we're doing for our troops. We have a fairly young workforce, but I'll tell you the area where we continue to struggle is attrition. And it's not any one singular thing. Our hiring has actually gotten national attention. The recruiting video that we did, some of the other initiatives that we've done with trying to attract women, increasing our numbers with women in policing and diversity and a variety of other things. We've really gotten a lot of accolades and a lot of people coming to the city of Charleston to talk about recruiting, hiring, training. But we continue to not be at complement. We're making progress, but I was hoping that we would be at complement and hiring for future vacancies by the end of this year for the next budget next year. And we're continuing to make progress, but not as quickly as I'd like. And the one factor is retention. The turnover rate is higher than I would like it to be. And I'll get to that a little bit later on. Next slide. So just a sampling of some of the creativity, some of the innovation, some of the really good work from our teams. If you kind of peruse this, it's amazing what we've done to be creative, to actually use evidence-based policing approaches, working with Clemson, working with other colleges. And you can see some of on the last bullet there, increased hiring from 13% in 2019 to 20% in 2021. And just demographics, the diversity for our underrepresented new hires increased from 33% in 20 to 41% in 2021. A total of 49 officers were hired in 2021, including 13 prior certs. So we're getting some experience from other agencies, people who come here from Chicago, New York, and other places around the country. And people are enjoying their time here. But when you look at the number of people that we're losing, if you look at the just macro numbers, if we had 450 officers and lost 45, that's 10%, and we hire 45, then the needle doesn't move. And so we have to continue to look at that. Some of that's retirements, some of that's leaving for federal jobs, which is a real compliment to our department. People are leaving to go to the FBI and some other agencies. But we have to continue to look at that. And I'll, next slide, we'll continue to talk about that a little bit. Training, again, I could not be more proud of our training cadre and just the partnerships that we have with other colleges. The amount of training that we're doing is astronomical, and it's necessary, and we have to continue to invest in our new officers and all of our veteran officers for their success. They're in a challenging work environment right now, and that's a big part of it. Hiring the best people, investing in their training, investing in their equipment, and leading them well is the keys that I always talk about, and we're doing all those things. Next slide. Just an example of some of our partnerships. When you look at our partnerships with federal agencies, our task force, in particular, focusing on things like violent crime, working with all of our local agencies, federal, state, and local agencies. It's amazing working with MUSC on some of the violence disruption initiatives, working very closely with them, Ashley Hink and others. A lot of good things that are going on right now. The last bullet there, we applied for and received a grant, a federal grant. It's called the Public Safety Partnership. It's a 3-year award to work closely with North Charleston and our local agencies and other partners to focus on specifically on violent crime. Go ahead. just some of our initiatives. And I'm not going to really spend a lot of time on each one of these unless there's a question. I have Heath King on the line right now. He's put a lot of effort and work into electronic monitoring. He's met with the judges. He's met with the prosecutors. He's done a lot of research with other agencies that have had a lot of success with electronic monitoring. We know that the current system is not working. And so this is something that we're going to begin in the next month or so. And we're going to look for other areas for funding and start small and see if we can have success with this. And it's got a lot of pluses. Heath, if you're on the line, just very briefly, if you want to just touch on some of your work.
Lieutenant King, you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I've got spotty reception, so Jason, Captain Bruder may have to hop in. But yeah, I've been working on this since July. I'm in Asheville on vacation, so hello everybody. But so we're looking at a program that's I've been working on this since July. It's a no cost to the offender, which is obviously probably the biggest plus on this. That gets the most pushback the other way. We're looking at repeat violent offenders. We're specifically targeting them. So this is not folks that steal a candy bar, they're going to get put on EM. This is the folks that are really causing the problems in the city. They're going to be selected at bond hearing. We're working right now, working out a process with the CJCC, who's going to, working through offender selection. And they have what's called a CPRA, which is a pretrial risk assessment instrument that helps pick offenders based on a bunch of risk factors. We've been in talks with them. We're looking at a 2-man unit that should be starting in about a month, hopefully. It's standard electronic monitoring where these violent offenders would have nighttime curfew hours, like 7 at night till 7 in the morning, which will basically minimize their ability to offend when most violent crime happens. So it's open in their daytime, so they have the ability to have a job and whatnot, where it's not too restrictive. The city would not be arresting folks for not coming home 1 or 2 times. We're not going to be arresting people at all for that. We're going to be like a hall monitor. We're going to report all the activity back to the court, and hopefully the folks are compliant. This is kind of their opportunity to be compliant. And after 120 days, each case will be reviewed. And if the person's been compliant, we're going to ask the court to remove the monitor so we can put it on somebody else. We're looking to do a few 4 or 5 in the beginning, the first month or so, just to kind of get our feet under us and make sure everything's working. But the goal is to have some data come back in this pilot program is what we're doing, and to pretty much start out within a couple months of having about 20 offenders on. 20 of the most violent offenders in the city will be monitored. I mean, I think that's just going to be amazing. We're going to get a lot of data back, and I think it's going to be really helpful. So I could talk about this all day, but I'm going to stop now. So thank you.
Lieutenant King, before you sign off, just one quick question for you. So some of these offenders, can they work with the monitor active? In other words, if a magistrate places them on a house arrest, with the exception of work, can this monitor still work for them under that scenario?
Yes, sir. And it will be, the restrictions will be based on the offender, but what we're looking at in the beginning, and it can always be fine-tuned, is more or less having them home at night for 12 hours, let's say 7 to 7. And in the daytime, they have a lot of free reign to work and get family stuff done and do everything else they need to do, but they'll have to be home at night. So yeah, they can absolutely work. That's kind of how it's been engineered. So it's not too restrictive. So 12 hours during the day should be enough to get some work done. And, depending on their compliance, it may be loosened per the judge or per us. So, we're just trying to get our feet under us, but we want success from these guys. We want the crime to come down, but we want them to be successful.
Well, I applaud you for taking the initiative on this. It sort of goes hand in hand with a little bit of a turn 90, but in a different setting. These are folks who have been arrested. They have not been adjudicated on their charges. but it certainly gives the community a sense of security, knowing where they are, but, and at the same time allowing them to be somewhat productive if they can go out and work as well. So thank you, Lieutenant. I know you've been dedicated to this for quite some time, and I just want to give you a huge shout out for the work that you've done on this. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Chief Reynolds, is there something else we need to, do you want to close out with that comment?
That's it for the electronic monitoring, and then I'll briefly go through the rest. There's just a couple more slides.
Okay, go ahead.
Leadership Development Institute, that's a big part of, because we are becoming a younger organization. We've had a lot of promotions. It's something that is kind of ingrained in our development of our organization. We just got another $30,000 grant from the Rotary, the Downtown Rotary Club, which was a huge plus for us. We now have, and since our last meeting, we haven't talked about this, so it's worthy of just mentioning, a sworn sergeant, Beth Wolfson, who is our public information officer. Charles Francis retired after a long, very successful career. And we have our mounted patrol unit. Go to the next slide with some pictures. I think everybody's seen some of that. Just something to mention. It's a public-private partnership. The Convention and Visitors Bureau, Explore Charleston, partnered with us. They've paid essentially for everything for a year, and we've provided the officers. And we have two very seasoned officers, Bill Gritz, Sergeant, who was actually in the unit prior to it being dissolved, and Natasha Holland, who is a horse person, has a lot of expertise and is a great police officer. And so they really have gotten off to a good start. Next slide. Just an update, just mention of the racial bias audit, and just some of the hallmarks, and just we've done some updates, and this is just another quick update. And I know that we may actually have a more in-depth presentation at another time, but this is it's obviously a critical part of what we're doing. Next slide. Our dashboard, which is live, and we continue to get input and feedback on it, continue to modify it and grow it and make it better. Next slide. This is our final, the awards banquet. Just making mention that we had a awards banquet. Those are some of the recipients. They numerous Valor Awards. It was very well received. It was the first time we've actually done kind of a formal banquet a few weeks ago, and people got to bring their family members, and we're already working on year 2, which will be, I think, even bigger and nicer. And it was hard to get everybody in there because it was so many amazing awards. Next slide, and the final slide. These are just some of the emergent priorities and needs, capital projects and facility planning. We mentioned salaries. That the city, Kay and her team are doing a study, which I've talked to her about, and I'm pleased with, and I think they have a very good approach, which will address some of the retention and attrition issues, which we also have ownership. I think our culture, continuing to look at a lot of things within our own organization, but I think salaries is going to be a part of that. It's going to help in the long run, and I'm excited to see some of the outcomes of what Kay's team is working on. And violent crime obviously will continue to be a priority for us. We've paid a lot of attention, focused a lot of resources and a lot of partnerships, and a lot of good things have happened, but I think even more in the days ahead, in particular, federal adoptions of cases and federal prosecutions and a variety of other things, and just continued growth in the city on numerous different fronts. And one of the things that the mayor mentioned in the State of the City address, which I think is going to be discussed more in the coming days, is safety and security camera fundings. And there's a nice opportunity, I think, that the mayor identified through ARPA funds, and so more to come on that. But the last thing I'll say is the city is back, and Charleston is roaring in terms of the economy, in terms of tourism, in terms of special events, in terms of just everything throughout the city. And our men and women are focused on that every day, and it's exciting, but it's challenging. So a lot of good things happening.
Chief, that was very comprehensive and very fast. And I appreciate your team's work, because I know you just don't throw these numbers together and put this together at the last second. So thank you for that very comprehensive report. And thank you to your team. I appreciate Lieutenant King being on vacation and giving us an update on the electronic monitor. Before I forget, and before I turn it over to other committee members, would you please have somebody forward to me that PowerPoint presentation? Because I'll pull some of those figures and slides off for tomorrow's meeting when I make a full report to City Council. So if I can get that. And the other item I want to ask you about is, you touch on it rather briefly, but the racial bias audit. What is it? There's a next step in a reporting process with this. You gave us some numbers on the number of recommendations, what's in progress, what's been accomplished, but are we doing another update on that more involved?
We are. Cheeto, I don't know if you want to just briefly speak to that. I know that we've had a lot of discussion on that. I know Captain Curtel has been working diligently on it with a team of people on getting an actual report produced so that would be made public.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, we will be doing a more comprehensive presentation for you, Councilman Sheehan, at your convenience. Some of the outstanding recommendations are involved around like traffic and third-party assessments, which hopefully will be done before the end of the second quarter, with some of the stuff coming through our legal representation and just some polishing up on that final third-party assessment piece. So Captain Curtel has been leading that charge, but it's ready to go, and a part of that will be included in our annual report.
And so when do we expect that next quarterly report to take place, Chief?
The annual report will be done by the end of this month.
Okay, thanks.
And Cheeto, do you want to mention just the procedural justice position? You guys have been working hard doing a national search, very collaborative, very broad reaching, and really there's been a lot of interest in that position. And you and a number of other experts have been working on that. And I think we have some good candidates, and we're doing some interviews. And
yes, sir. Actually, Cassandra is on the line. We just closed it out. I think last week it was closed out as far as the opening. We're heading to phase 2, which she'll be taking lead with, and it will incorporate a pretty diverse group of assessors to include outside professors and some CPAC members as far as our phase 2 interviews and going through a selection process with those candidates. But we got a lot of candidates from all over, so hopefully it works out for everyone this time around.
Very good. Thank you, sir. All right, Chief, I'm open up to other questions from any member of the committee. Councilmember Mitchell, Councilmember Seeking is mayor. Any questions for any of these presenters?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I might, just very briefly, and I'm sorry I'm blocked out, I'm in a meeting. So on Heath's presentation on the monitoring, I know that it's information for us at this point, but what steps in the near future do we as a council need to take in support of that program that he's presented to us today?
really, I'm not sure there's a lot that the council needs to do. I think the council needs to know that we're doing this, and that's why we put it in our presentation today, because Heath is ready to begin that effort, and it will start in earnest in May, within the next month. So maybe I would kind of throw that back at you in the sense that whatever council requires of us, we will keep you abreast and aware of what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it. And I, the biggest thing I think is always cost, and what does that look like into the future? And we want to be transparent about that. And we have to do a pilot, and somebody's got to take the bull by the horns with this, because it's not working. You probably heard me talk about it publicly, locally, and nationally. It's just this current ankle bracelet, GPS monitoring, whatever form it's supposed to take is not working. It's just not at all, almost zero. And so in some cases, we have to have a better approach, and that's what this is. And I'm not really answering your question, I don't think, but
well, maybe I should have been more direct. I was being somewhat diplomatic. Is there going to be some financial obligation that you're going to need us to build into the budget to support that program as it gets going? I mean, I think that's really, in the end, we certainly support what you all want to do and make the streets safer. And if there's a monetary component to it, probably best to know it now so we can get it in front of the ad hoc committee.
There is, and it's I want to do it in this current year cycle. It's a drug forfeiture fund that we have access to, that we can utilize for things like this. It's designed for things like this. And the dollar amount that we have right now is $16,000, beginning in May through the end of the year, to get essentially the numbers that Heath talked about, to start with a 5, to get it up to as many as 20, which is something that would actually yield us some measurable results of whether or not this is going to work, whether it's going to be beneficial, whether, the courts will accept it, that, there's a lot of people that have to play a role in this for it to be successful. So it's a very small amount for a finite amount of time. And then the ad hoc budget committee discussion more would be in the fall. Okay, it's working. Now we need to work something into our budget. And by the way, there's other partners that we believe, if this is going to grow significantly and substantially, would play a role in that and would have to pay their share. And I think there's grant monies that could be used for things like this. So we're not starting something that we can't get our arms around. As a city, this is really a regional problem, and this is something that's going to have to involve our entire region, I think. And that's why he became very collaborative, why he's reached out, and slowed this whole thing down. He said he's been working on it since July, and a lot of that is meetings and discussions to get to this point, to just start with something small. But if it's successful and it's embraced, it's something that really needs to involve a lot of other people.
And I think,
thank you.
And I think, Chief and my committee members, that this problem that we've been dealing with on folks who are out on bond being rearrested has just been more aggravated because of COVID restrictions on court time and jury trials. And so these folks are out. They've been out a little bit too long pending resolution. And now that is just aggravated by the COVID restriction. So it's just, it's sort of got on steroids.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying, and it's hard for me to even say this, in the entire year, last year, 12 months, in the entire Charleston County, not the city, the entire Charleston County court system, during a period where we were experiencing the largest increase in violent crime in the history, incrementally, in the history of our state, we had 7 trials total. 7. I'm not playing the blame game. I'm not saying who's at fault. I'm not saying why that happened. I don't know for the life of me, but what Peter just said is true. We all have to find solutions to protect our communities. And this is one creative way that may actually be a win-win, that may help the offenders, may help the courts, and may help our communities and save a life, because there are repeat violent criminal offenders who are armed, they're dangerous, and they're out in our communities right now, and we're arresting them on a regular basis. And somehow we've got to get creative, and this is one small way that I think could have a substantial positive impact for a low investment and a high yield. But it's worth mentioning, and I'm sorry, Peter, if I don't want to get off on a tangent, but I do think—
No, Steve, I think you and I have had this discussion, and it's very frank. And then I think the community just needs to understand that we don't run the court system. That's the circuit court system or the federal court system. And we're are at their mercy on when cases are being moved. And so you've said it publicly that a large number of these violent crimes are done by a small segment of our population. And that old saying that justice delayed is justice denied applies across the board to the person who's been charged with the offense, but also to the victims and to the community as well. So it's just we're all in this circumstance because of a terrible pandemic. And this is a way that we need to be creative, as the chief said, and Lieutenant King has mentioned, to move forward with that. So but I also know that the county sheriff's department tried this many, many years ago, and it didn't work. And I think the problem was that they bit off too much that they could chew at first. So, and I talked to Lieutenant King about this. So we're going to do this incrementally, make sure we got our feet on solid ground, and we'll be moving forward. Mayor, I see that your hand is up, and I know we're cutting into Chief Curry's time and also Shannon's time. So, Mayor, I'll call on you next for any comments or questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just wanted to shout out to Chief Reynolds and everybody in the department. I mean, with the fact that we're kind of back with big events, they're juggling a lot of balls. The community policing seems to be having an impact. So I couldn't be more proud of them. But I did want to ask how, what is also encouraging to me, and I think maybe it has a impact on our crime rate now going down, is how good they are at catching people when a crime is committed. And I wanted the chief just to give us a quick report on the forensics facility and how that's been helpful to us in solving crimes that do occur.
I couldn't be more proud of the team in the forensics facility, and there's a couple of force multipliers that happen with the new facility. One is NIBIN, National Ballistics Information Network, and our ability to analyze shell casings on a real-time basis, and that it's a force multiplier, and it's really been a game changer for us to be able to do that in-house now. And we're helping the region and the partners, and it's been tremendous with all the shootings that we've been having. The other thing is the DNA lab. We have a position in the current budget, which Judy is seeking to fill. It's competitive because of the salary issues and all those types of things, but she's going to get it filled and beginning the process towards filling that part of that new facility. That's going to be completely a game changer for public safety and for our region. And so, Mayor, you hit on something really amazing, that the chemistry that we have in our region with all of our partners, the chemistry that Judy has developed with her team and all of her partners with SLED and others. And every time there's a crime, just about of any significance, her team is out there. Somebody from her team is out there. And they're working with our detectives and our investigators, and they're sharing information, whether it's on phones or whether it's on computers or whether it's on whatever the case is. They're sharing it with each other. And I got to tell you, that's the only way that we can keep our community safe, is working together. And it's working. And Judy's a huge part of that and her team.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman Mitchell, we really do need to get to Chief Curry. We got 3 minutes left. So
it's a quick question.
sure.
Chief, I don't have a problem with none of this that's going on that what you are planning on doing. But let me ask a quick question. One question was, how did we come up with the time? And secondly, have we checked to make sure that no one's going to come up and say it's a violation of individual rights, even if they're out on bond or even if they're out in the community? That's the only question I just want to ask.
What was the first part of the question?
How did we come up with the time? The time that, they have to be back in the house or be, off the streets. And secondly,
That's usually by the judge who sets the bond, Councilmember Mitchell.
Yeah, and actually on both accounts, we don't have the authority to do this
Right.
independently. So your questions are really good. And that's where Heath from day one has met with the judges, has done his homework with the law around the state and South Carolina. And there's some other, Horry County in particular has a pretty robust entity that has a lot of successes. And so this is not our decision. It's based on the law and the courts.
Okay, that's all I want to know in case when this comes up, I'll be able to explain to individuals that come to me, hey, this is not the police department. This is coming through the courts. So I just want to make sure, because I'm out there and you know that my area is an area that have a lot. So I have to be able to explain this when I'm out in the community at night. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, we're gonna we'll cut you off, Chief. Yes, we really are cutting into Chief Courier's time, and we haven't even gotten to Shannon's staff on an update with the emergency management update. And I know we got a 4 o'clock real estate committee meeting. So Chief Courier, I don't want you to rush through this. And what we could do, and actually, Tim, if you would prefer this for you and Shannon, for us to have another meeting in a couple of weeks, as opposed to trying to run through this in 2.5 minutes. Shannon gives me the sum up. Chief Courier, what's your preference on this?
You know, I think that a couple of the issues that we have to cover might take a couple of minutes, so it probably would be more beneficial to have the time allotted to do it.
Okay. So, Madam Clerk, let's just anticipate scheduling our next meeting 2 weeks from the day for public safety, and we'll dedicate for just 2 items on items 1 and item 2, update on the fire department and update from Shannon's emergency management team. Then if there's anything else that we need to throw in there, we can put those behind them, but I want to do that. Is that okay with the rest of the committee members? I don't want to rush to, these are just too important for us to try to cram in and not give them the time they deserve. And our clerk warned me I should give an hour and a half, and I didn't listen to her. So, but I think we were just trying to time crunch on other things as well today. So, committee members, is that okay with the rest of y'all? Councilmembers Mitchell, Seekings, Mayor. Not hearing your response, I take your silence as an acclamation. You muted, Mayor. I'm sorry.
All good. Please.
Yeah.
Proceed.
Okay. Good. So Chief Courier and Shannon, I think let's just give ourselves a little bit of breathing room, and because it really is way too important, which I'll have to tell us, and I just don't want to do a 30-second run through. Okay. All right. So it is a minute before 4 o'clock. We're going to transition over to the next city council meeting, which is real estate. Chief Reynolds and your entire staff, thank you so much. That was a very thorough and an important update, and we're trying to do this on an annual basis to get a sense of the health of our major departments, police and fire and emergency management. And Amy, I know you signed off, but thank you so much as well for that, your report. So we are adjourned, and we'll transition to our next committee meeting. Thank you all.